Michael Ratner, as you listen to John Brennan, again, heading up the transition team on intelligence, your thoughts?
Well, it's extremely, extremely disturbing. When you read Jane Mayer's book, the worst and most onerous chapter is the chapter on what the CIA did to people in secret sites, from small coffins to waterboarding. John Brennan was there at the time. To hear him say that this stuff works is really remarkable, or it's very important to do, is really remarkable. It's that he's saying that at the same time when we know about the center's client, Maher Arar, being sent to Syria, tortured, so-called diplomatic assurances somehow able to protect him, other Guantanamo people sent to Egypt with the worst kind of torture. So the idea that Brennan, who should probably, along with Tennant, be facing some kind of war crimes trial, is actually heading the transition on this is extremely disturbing. And
Jamie Missick, Mel Goodman, talk about
Jamie Missick
her
was the deputy director. She was the deputy director of intelligence during the run-up to the war and in the immediate post-war period. That was a period of politicized intelligence. That was a period of the corruption of the process. That was a period when all analytic tradecraft, all of the rules of analytic tradecraft were ignored. She passed judgment on the October 2002 estimate. She passed on the white paper, which was the phony paper that violated the CIA charter because it took classified material and then declassified it and sent it to the Congress only days before the vote on the authorization to use force in Iraq in October 2002. She was part of the slam dunk team that George Tenet was so proud of, that prepared a phony, not only that phony estimate, but the speech that Colin Powell gave, that outrageous speech with 28 allegations, all of them false, prepared in February of 2003, which was the case to the international community. Hundreds of millions of people heard that phony speech, and it's still an embarrassment to Colin Powell to this very day. She was part of the team that allowed George Bush to go before this country in January of 2003 in the State of the Union address and use a fabricated intelligence report to say that Iraq was getting enriched uranium from a West African country. Jamie Missick was a part of all of this, and a lot of us were very pleased when Porter Goss actually fired Jamie Missick. My guess is he probably fired her for the wrong reasons and not the right reasons, but we were glad to see her go. And now for Obama to turn around, put Jamie Missick back in the CIA in transition and Brennan in the transition process, and then you look at people such as the former deputy lieutenant, John McLaughlin, who was also an intelligence advisor, and Rob Risher, who was a key operations advisor, who was the deputy to Jose Rodriguez, who's now being investigated by the Justice Department for the illegal destruction of the torture tapes. You know, you have to wonder, who is Obama relying on for advice on the Washington community? He's only been in Washington, we know, for 2 years, and obviously there are things he needs to know about national security, the CIA, and the intelligence community, and obviously he's listening to the wrong people.
Mel Goodman, I want to thank you for being with us, former CIA and State Department analyst. His latest book is called Failure of Intelligence, The Decline and Fall of the CIA. Michael Ratner, I wanted to play for you once again what Barack Obama said last night on 60 Minutes in his interview with Steve Kroft.
There are a number of different things that you could do early pertaining to executive orders. Right. One of them is to shut down Guantanamo Bay. Mm-hmm. Another is to change interrogation methods that are used by U.S. troops. Are those things that you plan to take early action on?
Yes. I have said repeatedly that I intend to close Guantanamo, and I will follow through on that. I've said repeatedly that America doesn't torture, and I'm going to make sure that we don't torture. Those are part and parcel of an effort to regain America's moral stature in the world.
There you have President-elect Barack Obama saying he's going to close Guantanamo and make sure the U.S. doesn't torture.
Well, obviously, I mean, we at the center represent scores of Guantanamo people, scores of people who've been tortured. And of course, this is a very, very important statement. I mean, this is a shift. This is someone who I now believe will close Guantanamo, and I hope will apply the anti-torture rules to not just the military, but to the CIA and everybody else. So that's actually very positive. The negative part is really what we've seen come out, floated by ostensibly members of the transition team and others, which are two issues. I called it rewrapping Guantanamo to make it more palatable. Not at Guantanamo, but maybe here. One is preventive detention, and the other is national security courts. And they work together. If you really look at what Guantanamo was, it's essentially a preventive detention facility where the United States really tried to give people no legal rights to challenge that preventive detention. Finally, we got into federal court, et cetera. That's what it represents, preventive detention and bad court review. So what you see in these new proposals, which are really they're being floated slowly, maybe they're from academics, they're from transition people, saying we may need a preventive detention scheme, which is incredible to me. I mean, we've had 200 years of a country and never had to have a preventive detention scheme.
Explain what you mean by preventive detention.
Preventive detention is really what we see at Guantanamo. It's when you are put into a prison without being charged with a crime and without having a trial on that charge. It means you're put into a prison for national security reasons because you're, quote, dangerous. And in this case, the proposals that seem to be working together, preventive detention and national security courts, are yes, we may need to jail people because they are dangerous or national security threats. And even for that, their testing of that preventive detention can't occur in a regular court. We don't think they're sufficient enough. We're going to set up national security courts to do that. So what you're really seeing is a rewrapping of Guantanamo in a legal new paper to make it more palatable. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope there's huge objections. The idea that this country would go into a preventive detention at this point and special courts after we've been litigating for years to say these people have a right to get into a federal court and we shouldn't have a preventive detention scheme is remarkable to me. And I would really think that while it's great that he wants to close Guantanamo and end torture, I mean, to set up an alternate scheme is really un-American.
The Associated Press is reporting that Obama advisors are crafting a plan that would put the prisoners in U.S. courts. Under the proposal, some prisoners would be freed while others would be sent to trial in criminal courts in the United States. A third group would go in front of a new court system designed to handle so-called national security cases.
At Guantanamo, there's 255 people. The majority of those just should be released. I mean, that's clear, if not almost everybody. The rest of them should be tried in federal courts. What this floated piece by the AP reporter is saying is, yeah, we'll try some of them, we'll free most of them, but some of them are going to be put in these national security courts and held in preventive detention. The question is why? What are we doing here? The reasons they give are we can't disclose classified information, and maybe we can't prove that they're actually committed crimes. Well, classified information is dealt with all the time in our federal courts. There's hundreds of trials in which they have methods of dealing with classified information. The other issue is more serious. Yes, they may only have evidence from torture against some people. Well, that shouldn't be allowed to hold people in national security courts or in regular courts. In fact, if anything, national security courts and preventive detention, in my view, will encourage torture because you'll have special ways of holding people without being able to suppress the evidence. I mean, it's amazing. What they're taking is essentially a made-up problem, much like the ticking time bomb, and trying to build an entire superstructure of preventive detention and national security courts on top of it when we don't even ever have one of those so-called ticking time bombs.
Michael Ratner, I want to thank you for being with us, president of the Center for Constitutional Rights. And that does it for our broadcast. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Shrifo Dakadusa, Aramante, Angelique Comet, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Massoud, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Peter Curry's our engineer. Special thanks also to Becca Staley. On Wednesday night, I'll be in Jeffersonville, New York. On Thursday night in Geneva. You can go to our website, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.